Previously, we had an episode of Genera Gems, which showed you the intro to scripting. In this episode, we're going to take it a little bit deeper, and we're going to show you where you can use scripting in a Labware node and its criteria. Coming up on Genera Gems. Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of Genera Gems. Today's going to be an interesting one. Igor and I put this together, and it's really cool the way we're making things work and the things that we're looking for. Igor, why don't you elaborate a little bit on what this is going to show once we're finally completed?
Yeah, so as you said, this is a continuation of our scripting series, and we're going to show how to do scripting within a Labware node, specifically how to filter based off a script to make sure that you're selecting the correct Labware.
Yes, and it's interesting because we went through this before we started recording, and there's three things that we have that are a part of the Labware that we're actually looking for. And then we'll also do a combination at the last set of scripting. So I think this is really going to be cool. We're going to walk you through the entire process of building it. So we'll start from a clean slate. There won't be any process lane already developed. We'll walk you through that process. So Igor, why don't you share your screen and let's get going.
Yep, and as you said, we're going to be focusing specifically on the Labware node script criteria. So we're going to create a fairly simple process, which is just moving plates between Hotel 1, as you can see in my workspace, and Hotel 2. But as you can see, there's a combination of different properties and barcodes that we'll see once we get there. So just to give a little bit of more background and preface this, so we're doing Labware script criteria, so we need to have ways of differentiating Labware, and one of those ways are through properties. So I just want to show this, is that we have a reagent type property here, and we have different values. So right now we just have buffer A or buffer B, but this could be any name and any values. So let's get right into creating this process. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to add our lane. So we just, as Jeff said, we're going to have a blank slate. So we're building this from scratch. So what we're going to do is we're just going to call this our microplate lane. And then the first thing we're going to add is our Labware node.
Now this Labware node.
For those, yep, go ahead.
This Labware node acts as obviously the resource that is moving through the system. So there's a lot of things that we can identify here that some of them are very necessary, the first two in this. And the way we kind of treat this as is more of like a filter on what it is you're looking for. And when we get to the Labware criteria, that's when we really go deep into the filter and then we get super specific.
Yep. So as you said, we have to fill out the location or Labware, because if I don't, you'll see there'll be errored. It'll be errored out, and it'll just say no location specified and no acceptable Labware definition specified. So we have to do those two. So if we open this back up, so we're looking for a plate in ReadySoft Hotel 1, and we're specifically looking for the microplate 96. But here, as we could see for the Labware criteria, we have some additional criteria that we could put in here. So the three that come defaulted with the Labware node is lid. So if we're looking for a plate that's either lidded or not lidded, so let's say a plate cannot be lidded because it's going to a reader or a liquid handler, and we need to make sure that it's not lidded, we can do that, or the opposite case. Based off a certain operational status, do you want to give a little background on the operational status?
Yeah, absolutely. So this works in the case of if you're just looking for pieces of Labware that maybe have one of the classic cases may be read ready or incubation completed or something along those lines. So the way you can use this to your advantage is in a process lane like this. If you're looking for Labware that has a specific operational status and Genera in its context of a process doesn't find that status, it won't process any plates until that Labware sees that state. which is really kind of another controlling method with the software itself. So that's really advantageous. I also think that you can use this in a sort of a waterfall way. So if you see the microplate lane that we're generating here, and maybe you have three or four others, well, once you get out of the microplate lane, you waterfall to the next one, which has a different criteria you're looking for that came out of the microplate lane, and then to the next one, and then to the next one. So you kind of waterfall down the process lanes.
Yeah, this is very much widely used. So the next one is also barcode. So this needs to match the barcode exactly. So how this is typically used is we might have a variable. It's not shown up here because we don't have any variables in our variable table, but you could have this be based off a variable, and then that variable can be set from a CSV file. So you could have a list of barcodes in your CSV file and then import that into this Labware criteria, but it has to match it exactly. And then the last one is what we're going to be talking about in this case is the script. So as we could see from the description here is it filters a Labware based off a custom script, and the script must return a Boolean value. And if we want to reference the Labware class, we use the %sign Labware. And so the first one we're going to do is we're going to do based off of the Labware property that I specified before. So as you can see, the Labware property doesn't come default into the Labware criteria. And so that's exactly what we're going to do first. So what we're going to do is we're going to first have an if statement. So if we're going to reference the Labware class, Labware dot get property. And how I know that the Labware class has a get property method is because if we go under our all classes index API documentation or internal API documentation, I could search for the Labware class. And this is found within the ReadySoft directory in the docs folder. And then as you can see here, we have a get property. And so all we have to do is put in a string property value or an argument, and it'll return the string value. So we're going to do that in this case, and then we're going to have reagent type, because that's what the property is called. And then we're going to dot equals, and we're only going to be looking for buffer B values. And then the last thing we have to do is return true.
Now, this buffer type is the one we're looking for. If it sees anything else, it won't go fetch that plate, like a buffer as a result, A or C or something like that.
And as a result, we have to make sure to return false, or else you'll get an error saying that no condition has been met. So what we have to do is just make sure that if this isn't true, then it returns a false value. So once we click OK, we'll see that that's all good to go there. Save this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply move the Labware using our flex arm, and we're going to move it to ReadySoft Hotel 2. So now if I go and run this, I could run it from here. Actually, I'll run it from here. Just say next.
Just wait. In that case, on the start, you could just use a click button when you get over to scheduler view.
Yeah, we'll wait for user input, and then we'll click finish. So the reason why I put a batch count of 8 is, as you can see, I have a combination of buffer A and buffer Bs, and I have exactly 8 buffer B plates with that Labware criteria value. So now when I click OK, we'll see that it's going to start transferring plates from Hotel 1 and Hotel 2. And if we did this correctly, it should only be moving plates with a buffer B value and leaving plates with a buffer A value. And as you can see, that's exactly what it's doing.
And now here's the key to this. Here's the key to this is the fact that the viewers, you may have seen that Igor did not select a specific location. We told the software, this is what you need to find. You find them. I'm not telling you where they are. So it pulled from random locations where it saw that value, which makes it really great because we didn't have to make an explicit declaration to which self those things existed. Genera knew based on that property.
Yep, exactly. So this is a very powerful tool to be able to filter out Labware based off of the Labware property. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all the Labware. I'm going to reset this because we're going to go on to our second scenario. Import the Labware again.
And just as a highlight, that import Labware allows you to sort of set the deck for in just that case where we can export it and then we can bring it back in later for another run, or in this case, another demonstration of how things would work. So you decide where you want the Labware, export it, and then you can bring it back in later on. Really cool little tool.
Yeah, so you don't have to keep on adding Labware manually. You can just
Exactly.
import it from here, and it's all set up for the next run. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do barcode. So as we can see, we have a list of barcodes, some with an initial of IL and some with an initial of JN.
Where'd that come
And
from?
I know, I wonder where those came from. And now instead of doing this script here with the Labware property, I'm just going to delete this. And we're going to have another if statement, Labware dot get barcode, and that is a method within the barcode class. And instead of doing a dot equals, we're going to do a dot contains. And how this differs from the existing barcode criteria is that we're not looking for a full matching barcode. We're just looking for a partial barcode. And so the partial barcode I'm looking for is IL dash. So it's going to look for, it's going to see whether our barcode contains the sequence of characters. And so in this case, it's just looking for a partial barcode.
So Igor, in this case, wants to pull his plates out. Fair enough.
I just want to pull my plates out, but some plates have some different endings to them. So as a result, we need to have that custom script there. So I'm going to rerun this now with that Labware script criteria, and this one has 7 IL plates. Go next, and we're going to go finish. And then we're going to start this task. And now as we could see, if this is going to work properly, that it should only take out my IL plates and leave the JN plates.
Nice.
So
don't touch
if
my
you have
plates.
Yeah, don't touch it. I'm not touching your plates. Don't worry. So if you have multiple users who have the barcodes are a certain initial or a certain sequence of characters, you could use the
Yes.
dot contains to segment out those plates.
Yep. And again, the same rules apply as the last example is we did not make an explicit declaration of where these plates are. Genera, based on the contains this subset of characters, knew where they were and pulled them out.
Yep, exactly. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do this again. We're going to remove all of our Labware. We're going to import our XML file with our Labware information. And the last one we're going to do is I'm going to do based off an operational status. And not only are we going to do based off the operational status, because as we can see, we could already choose operational statuses. But what if we want to do 2 conditions?
Ooh,
Right? So
combos.
what if I want to keep this one? So I want to look for plates that have my initial, but I also want to look for Labware dot get operational status, which is a class within, which is a method within the Labware class. And then what we want to do is we want to get the status, and then we want to toString this. We want to convert that status into a string. And then we want to make sure that it equals error. If I did this right, I shouldn't have any errors. Also, one thing that's nice about this is it does check to see if you have any errors within your code. So as you can see, I didn't spell toString right, and it's going to yell at me as a result. So that's what's nice about this IDE here. It'll say when a script is invalid. So it's just a nice way to double check before running the process. And even when in errored state, I can't run it because there's a validation step.
And it pointed you in the right direction. Said script was not valid. Yeah.
Yep. So I could go back to my script and I could now fix this, and it tells me exactly where it's errored out. And now what I'm going to do, so one thing I need to do, and this is another tidbit of information, is let's say you want to edit the operational statuses or any other properties to multiple plates. As you can see, some of these plates have the read error, but some of them doesn't have an operational status at all. So what I could do is I could select the hotel, right click on it and click edit Labware properties. And then I need to select which positions I want to edit, or which shelves in my hotel. So I want to edit 1, 5, and they're just comma. And if I want to select multiple, all I got to do is put a dash between the numbers, and then 11 to 14. And then I just want this to have an operational status of read completed. So you can see that there's some with read completed, there's some with read error. And if I was to run this now, so I have two conditions. So they have to have a barcode of IL, and they have to have an operational status of error. So if I was to run this, I believe there's only 2 plates that satisfy these conditions. And if I click next and then start, there we go. So as you can see that there's some read error still here, but if I was to change this to barcode, we could see that they're JN. Oh, actually, there was
mine.
one more. Yep, they're yours that have that error. But as we can see that it didn't pick that last one because I needed a batch count of 2. So now if I want to get that last one with my barcode, with my initial, and with the read errored operation, I could just quickly do a batch count of 1, rerun this, and then run, and it's going to find it and move it over.
Boom.
Yep. So now we could see that in Hotel 2, I have my 3 Labware with the IL barcode with the operational status of read error, or of error in this case. But I could also filter based off of the operation if I wanted to. So we could do other kinds of operational statuses, or not even just operational, but other Labware criteria. Or we could do things that are outside the Labware if we wanted to. Just as long as it returns true and false, we're good to go.
Yeah. So this was a great way to show how you can really get with minimal code. I mean, you think about what Igor has here. He has 5 lines. One of them is a blank, but he has essentially 4 lines of code, and he's picking 2 criteria out to pull from a location that he's seriously wanting to look for. He's looking for his plates that are in error, and then he's going to isolate those. So in 4 lines of code, he's able to do that. So this is a powerful little tool that's inside the Labware node to allow you to pull specific things out of a hotel or location. Now, obviously, you can get a little crazy here if their location was something like a cassette in a STX 110 or something to that effect. But just in those 4 lines of code, we're able to make decisions based on 2 criteria with that we didn't have to make some special script outside of the Labware criteria. So it's a really powerful tool to utilize, and use it the way you see fit. There's lots of classes obviously to pick from. Labware was just a specific one here, and it worked for the demo that we were demonstrating. So you can use scripting in this way as a powerful tool to help you as well find the Labware that you're looking for in your process without making explicit declarations. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Genera Gems, and we will catch you on the next one.